Horror films are a beloved genre, with some of the top films raking in hundreds of millions worldwide. Full of gore, fear, and, of course, death, people get a sort of adrenaline high from watching characters on screen be chased by their particular boogeyman, whether it be an alien, a dream demon, or just your classic psycho stalker. A pattern arose quickly in horror, however. The torture and fear of women is highly marketable, and horror films often directed towards men use this to pull them in. This issue gave rise, in the 70s, to the concept of the final girl. Final girls were meant to correct this issue. They survived longer than the men in horror, and were often credited for their cool aesthetic and ability to survive. They gave hope to women's survival, and told them that they could survive. It was meant to be empowering, to say that women were able to outwit the monster too often being men.
It's me, Billy. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Corn syrup. Same stuff they use for pig's blood in Carrie.
Help me, please.
Surprise, Sydney.
The issue with the classic final girl, however, is that it is incredibly helpful and demonizes women who do not follow the rules set by horror and conservative society at the time. Final girls, almost as a rule, are beautiful women. She abstains from drinking and drugs and from premarital sex. More than that, she is just generally modest and demure. So often they are portrayed buttoned up with high turtlenecks and large sweaters. She is a quote-unquote good girl. She is the well-behaved girl who never gets into any compromising situations and is meant to be a role model for the impressionable female viewer. While to some this may seem beneficial, why not have the role model be someone who knows her boundaries? The issue is that, for one, she is often unaware of her desexualized nature. It's not a choice. And further than that, her counterparts, the other women in the film who are murdered, are different. The murdered women, often killed in painful spectacles of sensationalized death, are portrayed as liberated women, implied to be amoral and vapid, oftentimes being killed right after sleeping with someone. Linda Vanderklok, for instance, is one of the most obvious examples of this. In the original Halloween, she is strangled by Michael Myers after sleeping with her boyfriend. Or Kelly Meeker in Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Or Samantha Thomas in Halloween 5. At least once a movie in the Friday the 13th films does someone die after sleeping with someone. Even in I Know What You Did Last Summer, or Anna in the Cabin in the Woods, or you get the picture. If you have sex in horror, you die. Drinking and drugs also falls into the same realm. Partying and being anything less than straight edge got you killed. This gives the implication that this is a moral issue for everyone. This demonizes any woman who dares to stray outside the lines of what was conventional purity culture.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1, you can never have sex. Big no-no! Big no!
I'm a dead man.
Sex equals death, okay? Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. No, the sin factor. It's a sin. It's an extension of number 1. And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.
You see, you push the laws and you end up dead.
And it's where hormone-driven teens love to come and fool around. So very likely, we're about to see someone get killed.
The message was that if you partook in a liberated lifestyle that had any sense of sexuality, you deserved to die. The final girls survived because they were opposite to this. Final girls were the ideal role model who was rewarded for her obedience and adherence to the status quo. Her purity was what saved her life, which told women that purity and modesty was their only way to survive. These films were often directed towards men, who were entertained by the idea of pretty women being murdered. Horror director Dario Argento put it into words. "I like women, especially beautiful ones. If they have a good face and figure, I would much prefer to watch them being murdered than an ugly girl or man." This gave the perception that this was okay, that the pretty, overtly sexual women were worthy of death. Hitchcock too said that there weren't quite enough torture of women. This trope started during the popularization of the women's movement in the 70s and 80s, which was encouraging women's autonomy and expression of sexuality. To counter this, Hollywood murdered fictional versions of these women. The question pushed was, who deserves to survive, and the final girl trope answered that question.
I'm scared, Charlie.
In later years, however, people saw a problem with this demonization of liberated women. For one, society changed, and more people moved away from this traditional belief.
I gotta go. I am a god. Okay.
This resulted in a shift into correcting the trope. Erin Harson in You're Next is a survivalist who ends up surviving without ever participating in most of the final girl traits. She is an outlier. Black Christmas has the final girl unashamed of her promiscuity.
You messed with the wrong sisters.
Jennifer's Body showed Jennifer surviving the first part of the film solely because she wasn't a virgin.
What's your name again, Tiffany?
My name is Jennifer.
Super.
And throughout the film, her and Needy, the protagonist, are both strong, smart, and terrifying.
How could I ever be insecure? I was the snowflake queen.
Yeah. 2 years ago when you were socially relevant.
I am still socially relevant.
It Follows has the only way to survive being to have sex. Even Scream, an earlier version of this counter idea, had the final girl Sydney have sex and survive.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
This transition period between the first film school era of horror and the contemporary horror showed a clear overcorrection in the final girl trope. It Follows has the final girl, Jay, able to survive via sex. Jennifer's Body, although written by women who wanted to show the brutal nature of the female relationships around her, was mass-marketed to men with over-sexualizations of Megan Fox. In the remake of Fright Night, the vampire focuses on the teenage girl, rather than the mother, showing that the ideal woman had become younger in horror. Rather than making the final girl a demure, modest girl who never strayed, they instead resorted to over-sexualizing characters. The over-sexualization of women is just as objectifying as having pretty girls be killed on screen for the enjoyment of men. In modern horror, there have been some breakout films, such as The Invisible Man or The Witch. Both of which show a big change in the way that horror was portrayed on screen. In The Witch, Anya Taylor-Joy's character Thomason is accused of being a witch by her mother, to the point where she does end up giving up her purity and becoming a witch anyway, signing her name in Satan's book. In The Invisible Man, Celia, played by Elizabeth Moss, survives her abusive husband by donning his tech suit and killing him. She becomes comfortable in the suit, breathing a sigh of relief when she has killed him and is finally free. Midsummer 2 had the main character Danny getting vengeance on her boyfriend's callousness. In both of these cases, there is almost a breath of fresh air when they are free from the constraints that they were under for most of the film. The issue is that they are all stuck in a new space. Thomasin has given herself to Satan. Celia has an understanding of the suit, and it is implied that there is a possibility that she could continue on killing other people as the Invisible Woman, and Danny, of course, is stuck in a murderous cult. None of these things are things that should be advocated for. The final girl trope is misogynistic and should be avoided, but so is the overcorrection of the trope. The overcorrection is harmful because it not only objectifies women, but also tends to imply that falling into the pattern of promiscuity and murder that the antagonist does is the best option, the only way to survive. In order to save the woman, she must take an eye for an eye, and although that makes sense in a self-defense situation, it implies that the only way for a woman to succeed is to act like the man in the film, to act like the antagonist, which is incorrect and unhelpful. It is misogynistic because it implies that there is only one path to success, and it is the one that the men in the film have already traversed, regardless of its morality.
Mom? Mom?
Oh my God, Daddy! Make
What the answer to this is, I'm not sure, but a good start would be to start treating female characters in horror as well-rounded characters. Although the overcorrection is still harmful, it is better than the original final girl trope.